Good morning and welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. It's a beautiful day today because we have a Deadpool trailer to talk about and an array of brilliance at the table. Dan Murrell is here as always.
As always.
As always. Welcome, Dan.
I live here.
Sasha Perl-Raver.
Yeah, so excited to be here, and especially with this
and
gentleman.
A very special guest indeed, Mr. Marc Bernardin, co-host of Kevin Smith's Batman on Batman, Castle Rock writer, extraordinaire human.
Brain
Big.
Massive.
Big brain. And we're going to need it today because we have a lot to talk about, starting with the Deadpool trailer. I don't know if we'll need your massive intellect on that, but we do need to know your response. Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. I mean, what's not to enjoy? It's exactly the tone you thought you were going to get from a Deadpool trailer. I appreciate the awesome gravelness of the Brolin boy. And I like a good Toy Story gag, so I'm on board.
I like the idea that he's like, that Brolin. I will say, when I was watching it, I was thinking between Sicario, this, and Thanos, he's just brawling across the universe.
Yeah, he is. Big time.
He's having a moment.
Sasha, are you more on board, less on board?
I thought it was fantastic, and especially, I mean, that moment where it's not like we're trying to recreate a mustache or digitize a mustache made me so happy. The mustache joke was prime. I think that they know exactly what they're trying to do already with the marketing, with like the Flash dance covered in bullets shot poster that we've seen. They've got the recipe for success, and they're just going to serve it up on a big, yummy platter for us.
I have to say I liked the mustache joke, but I will say the weird thing to me was that half of it felt very traditional superhero film. Like all of Cable felt that way to me, and then it was like Deadpool was just denying him the ability to be in that movie the entire time.
I like that. I thought that was the bait and switch because I was watching it and I was waiting for that needle drop, moment, because it was. I think they leaned into it.
Yeah.
And the idea that it seems like Cable's role, even at the end with the fourth wall break, is to kind of be the traditional comic book character, and Deadpool bouncing off of that. And it's, you don't want to lampshade that too much, I don't think, but they're, as far as the marketing goes, they're not missing a step, and we'll see the movie itself. But I thought I don't know how much of it's Ryan Reynolds, and I don't know how much of it is the writers of the movie, and I don't know how much of it is the studio, but they've got selling it down. They can sell the hell out of these movies.
Yeah.
I love the fact that Cable is the Buzz Lightyear of this movie. Who doesn't know he's in an action movie?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to be fun the entire time for him to continue to cut him off from being the thing that he is currently being for Marvel in earnest, in a way. Speaking of which, now we don't know if the deal is going through or not, but I think a question on some people's mind, or that they were talking about a little bit on Twitter, was if this deal does go through between Fox and Disney, does this Deadpool stay this Deadpool? Or do we get the Disney-fied Deadpool? And what would the Disney-fied Deadpool even be?
More Toy Story jokes, for sure. Obviously. No, I think that the reason that Deadpool works so well is because it went outside of the box. It went outside of the Fox box. So they're not going to shove it in the Disney box and think that's somehow going to make them money. I think they understand, like, they have to really push the envelope with this film. So there is no way to Disney-fy Deadpool.
Yeah, and I think they have to be okay with that. I mean, you don't buy a Fox if you're not willing to incorporate and treat Fox as if it's its own separate division that can have its own rules and play its own sandbox without having to kowtow or cater to any sensitivity-ness that comes with Disney.
Well, Deadpool. I'm excited. Yay!
That was good.
Now we're going to talk all things Star Wars. Big news yesterday.
That's a very Oprah-esque voice.
Was it?
Yeah, it's like,
oh my God. Well, basically, you got a Star Wars, and you got a Star Wars.
It's so true.
You got a Star Wars, and you got a Star Wars. That's what's happening, people.
Yeah.
So good. And by the way, thank you.
Yes, of
Best
course.
compliment I've literally ever gotten.
That was very Oprah, too. You're channeling.
On fire today. Yeah, okay, I'm going to talk about Oprah now. I'm just going to make this entire segment about Oprah.
Should Oprah have directed this movie?
Okay, that's an excellent and open question. Let's get into it. So yesterday, not only was it revealed that we're getting multiple Star Wars TV shows for the streaming service that is coming to us in 2019, we have still the Rian Johnson trilogy headed our way that is separate from the Skywalker saga that's ending in Episode 9. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss of Game of Thrones are going to get their own Star Wars series. I questioned whether that actually may be going to streaming as a big plug for the streaming, but we don't know. So there's two big questions around this. One, are Benioff and Weiss any good? Which there seems to be a pretty divided opinion about. And two, given what Kathleen Kennedy has promised in terms of diversifying behind the scenes of Star Wars, are these the creators that should have been given this shot? And there's a lot to break down with this. So I'd love to get your initial reactions and then just beg your indulgence as I set the stage at Lucasfilm.
I mean, my initial reaction is, if you take each one of these hirings discreetly, by themselves, JJ and Lord and Miller and even Colin Trevorrow and even Josh Trank, even Benioff and Weiss, each one by themselves makes a ton of sense. Like there's no why that guy. It's when you mass it all together and then you take the context of the last 40 years of Star Wars, and like one of these things looks exactly like every other one of these things.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, I love Game of Thrones. Is it problematic? Sure. Are stories problematic? Yeah. Are they problematic storytellers? That I don't know. You know, because I haven't seen a lot more context to be able to pull that into relief. I am looking forward to it, but in context with everything else, it feels as if a different way could have been gone that might have brought a more interesting lens to the Star Wars universe.
Sasha, what was your gut check?
My initial thought was, oh my God, I love Game of Thrones so much, but why do this? I'm happy it's not Confederacy, because when I heard about Confederacy,
Okay,
I was
that's
like,
the most ill-conceived idea that
Awful
ever
idea.
was.
If this means that
Yeah.
show is dead, then
Yeah,
Star Wars.
exactly. And that was one of my first thoughts. I love David Benioff as a writer. 25th Hour as a book is beautiful. I think it's a great Spike Lee film. But then you get into Troy and we start hitting some skids. So as a filmmaker, I'm not so sure. And D.B. Weiss is really untested in that way. So my first thought was, I really want to be excited about it because I love Game of Thrones so much. And I just think that I want to see whatever they're going to do next. I don't know that this makes sense. And especially given what you're talking about, Mark, like there are so many other directors. And having seen Black Panther, I just want Ryan Coogler to do everything.
Yeah, he's going to be pretty busy, though,
That's
because
true.
everyone's going to want him to do everything.
But a Star Wars movie makes a lot of sense.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Mark on the issue, or basically, there's Benioff and Weiss, and then there's the larger picture. Speaking to Benioff and Weiss, I thought it was hilarious how yesterday, after the news came out, Game of Thrones went from being OMG best show ever to that show sucks and they never did anything. And they had nothing to do with the
It
success.
was the weirdest thing.
And like, I'm sorry, but like for people to say like they didn't do anything good, it was all George R.R. Martin. I was like, oh, who did Battle of the Bastards, which was the best Game of Thrones episode ever? That was Benioff and
Who
Weiss.
gave you
after the
Tywin
books.
and Arya together,
man.
having some of the best dialogue on that series?
Who did that last season finale that everybody flipped out over? And it's, oh my God, it's just like, it's amazing how the Game of Thrones went from the best show ever on the internet to, that show sucks. It was never any good except for what George R.R. Martin wrote, and those guys are hacks. That's just the internet. That's just what happens, is nobody's a fan of, like, everyone's a fan silently, and then everyone hates everything very loudly. That's just how it goes right now on the
I feel like
internet.
that's life in a...
Yeah, it is. So, but I just thought it was hilarious the turn that Game of Thrones took yesterday from like greatest show ever to like those guys are hacks and the show's not that good and it was all about the books anyway. Having said that, I think that it's very dependent on, like, I don't know, and the reason that I don't know what their project is. I don't know if they came in and pitched something. I don't know if Disney pitched them. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and I think they have done some good things with Game of Thrones. And if you think the show makes itself, like, they didn't just transcribe George R.R. Martin's book.
And by the way, if they did, it would be 5 hours of television in which we watch Brienne walk around.
Yeah, well, that's Spencer.
It's a great series. I love it. I love it. I love the books and the TV show, but that's what it would be.
But no, Spencer said yesterday in the office. He's our at least in the office with Joe and Spencer and I. He's our Game of Thrones nut. You know, he knows everything, and he basically was just like, if you don't think Benioff and Weiss did anything, go think about what a straight-to-TV adaptation of A Feast for Crows or A Storm of Swords or anything would be. Like, as the show has gone on, like the first season, yes, a very direct adaptation of the first book because it was a shorter book. But like, if you think that they haven't done a good job adapting, you haven't I think everyone is saying that it was all George R.R. Martin. A lot of them haven't read the books. They just like to jump on this train of like, they didn't do anything, because that's the popular thing, is to hate everything.
There was a tweet to me that literally said, I haven't read the books, but I think most of the good stuff came from George R.R. Martin. By the way, I do credit George R.R. Martin 1,000% for creating this beautiful world and these characters. He does deserve all of that credit. When you say the creators of this HBO series, they are the creators of the HBO series. That's a different matter.
Well, but here's the other thing that we're not talking about, which is, let's not forget the Ron Howard of it all.
Yeah.
How much is we're going to bring in people who bring an automatic fan base, like the Game of Thrones fan base, and how much are they actually going to be involved? We're talking about adapting something. We're talking about like fitting into a new world. This is directing a lot by committee when you're going into a Star Wars movie.
Sure.
So just really quickly, and forgive me because I want to actually, part 2 of this discussion was going to be Benioff and Weiss, but we're already there a little bit. So I'm going to backtrack us just a little bit and we'll come back to this, which is, I agree with you, Mark, that there are major problems in the adaptations and major problems that they've had with some of the depictions of the characters, but it doesn't wipe out anything positive that they've done. Let's set the stage at Lucasfilm. In December of 2016, THR published an article celebrating the inclusivity of Star Wars and revealing that Kathleen Kennedy's executive team is 50% female. And here's what Kennedy said: when you have a balance of men and women, there are all sorts of things that enter in the discussion. When asked about hiring a female director at the time, she said, quote, "We want to make sure that when we bring a female director in to do Star Wars, they're set up for success." Asked to also expanding the roles of women in their other departments, here is what she said, and I think this applies to diversity in general. This is what she said. "You have to cast a broader net when you're interviewing and looking at possible prospects. In the creative community, there's no excuse for not making a more equitable environment. It literally comes down to companies that just aren't trying hard enough." Those are her words. In December of, and I'm not trying to throw her under a bus here either. In December of 2017,
you're holding her accountable. There's a difference.
You're introducing documentation into the record.
Yes.
For the court.
For the court to examine,
Yes.
exactly. In December of 2017, the New York Times did an article on the women who run Star Wars. It's about the 11 writers who make the Lucasfilm story group. Make that up. According to the article, under the guidance, this franchise's narratives, basically they oversee everything from the films to the video games, the TV shows, the books, everything. They have oversight on all of this. Rian Johnson worked with them. And at the time of the article's publishing, 5 of its members were persons of color, and the team included 4 women and 7 men. That's as compared to women who account for 13% and minorities 5% of all writers working in the top grossing films. So a pretty good balance for the story group. However, and there are implications of that in terms of like how the percentage of dialogue that went to women, which was 6.3% in A New Hope in 1977.
It was like
and
two women in that movie. And Beru and Princess.
basically. And 27.8% of all dialogue in The Force Awakens went to women. Also, in Rogue One, non-white characters accounted for 44.7% of the dialogue. So there are implications when you have a story group like that of what you see then on screen. However, Mo Ryan did an article in Variety yesterday gathering data, and out of the 17 theatrical films over 4 decades, 24 people were hired to direct, write, and otherwise take the creative lead on Star Wars. 23 of those key creators were white men. The sole exception is Lee Brackett, a white woman who had a screenplay credit on The Empire Strikes Back. Now, we took a quick look. I know this is a lot, so forgive me and thank you. We took a quick look at everything under Kathleen Kennedy, because that's really what we're talking about here. So, for The Force Awakens, 2 women above the line. And here's what we were looking at only. There's thousands of people working on these films, so we looked only at the director, the writers, the DP, and the editors. We could have gone beyond that, but that's where we stopped. 2 women, they were the editors. No persons of color. In Rogue One, 0 women, 0 persons of color. In The Last Jedi, 0 women, 0 persons of color. And in Solo, 0 women, 1 person of color, the DP. And in the upcoming episode 9, 2 women are scheduled. Those are the editors. So has
We've worked
she
with J.J. Abrams since Lost, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So has she fulfilled her own promise? Those were her words.
I mean, it's impossible for us to know the machinations and the deliberations and the conversations that have happened behind closed doors. It's entirely possible she's gone out to a dozen female directors and writers and said, do you want to do Star Wars? And they said, I don't want to give up 8 years of my life and most of my creative impetus to do this thing. Would it be fun? Yeah. Do I want to? No. That's possible. It could have happened. We don't know that. But I also don't believe that if you made an open call and says, who wants to make a Star Wars movie, you don't find a raft of people who would love to do that, who don't just look great in baseball caps.
Yeah.
You know, like I have to think that if you open those barn doors and you say, I want to do 3 new Star Wars movies, who wants to take a shot? You would get Shonda Rhimes raising her hand. You'd get Ava raising her hand. You should call Dee Rees, absolutely. Lexi Alexander would give her, left eye tooth to do so.
In a heartbeat.
There are so many talented women currently working at the height of their game, at the depth of their talents, who would kill to do it. And to tell me you can't find one person, and when you look at the numbers, when you look at what happens to franchises like Fast and the Furious, when you look at the numbers that are already trending for Black Panther, when you look at what Thor Ragnarok did, when you look at these movies and these franchises and these global brands that are dominating because they are inclusive both in front of and behind the cameras, there's no business excuse for not doing that. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make number sense. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the business of making money, which if you're Disney and you buy Lucasfilm for $4 billion, you're in the business of making more money.
They made it back already.
They made it back, but if you're committed to making Star Wars movies until the end of time,
which seemingly everyone's getting a Star Wars.
Yeah.
It should start feeling a little bit different from every other Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of maintaining interest in the stories. Mm-hmm. So what is your take on this?
I mean, there are a lot of moving pieces to it. I think that on the one hand, you should always hire the filmmaker whom you believe will deliver the best movie to the best vision that your team has executed. Who knows behind the scenes, how that's worked out. On the other hand, and I mean, this isn't a pressure that is coming externally for Kathleen Kennedy. This is something that she herself has kind of put on the forefront as one of her directives. And I think that it's what she said. It's not just about, if the opportunities aren't there, it's about creating the opportunities. And I think that's where, particularly with filmmakers, and I understand, a lot of people will point to, well, look at behind the scenes, look at the story team, look at the producers, and that's great. Those are all great steps forward. However, you also have to know, I think that as a movie fan, seeing people directing and writing movies, and it's very aspirational for people that want to go into that business. Steven Spielberg was somebody that I looked up to a lot and heightened my interest in movies and made me want to learn more about them and to devote a career to the art of it, the craft of it, learning about it. And so I think that we talked about above the line. I think that, part of this initiative has to be finding those stories and finding the people to tell those stories that will bring that kind of aspiration to everyone. Mm-hmm. And right now it's been Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, Ron Howard.
Yeah.
But I think that...
And those are just the people that didn't get fired.
Exactly. Exactly. Lord and Miller,
I'm with you, girl.
I do think that when you make such a public pledge to the cause of diversity, you have to know that behind the scenes is not going to get you all the way there, and that you have to also know that filmmakers look up to, when you give someone an opportunity, that sends a message to even the younger generation out there that says, hey, I can do this. And when you don't see that very often, I think that's very helpful. So I know a lot of people are throwing Kathleen Kennedy completely under the bus for this. I think that she's made some positive strides with other parts of the company, but I do think that it's time to find that voice out there that wants to tell that story, that can bring that sense of inclusion and diversity to all aspects, not just the team working in the offices over in Burbank, but the people behind the camera that are out there making the movies and directing and writing those movies.
But the one problem with that is, Marc named some great names, and another name I want to throw in that is Reed Morano, who said that she had conversations with Lucasfilm. TBD as to what happened there. But what you're talking about is you want people to see inclusion and you want filmmakers to have this opportunity, but they have to have the first opportunity. Colin Trevorrow, didn't make a ton of films before he was given this opportunity. Lord Miller had, they definitely proven themselves, but you have to have directors who are given the opportunity, who are women and who are people of color. Yes, Roth?
Thank you.
Hand
up. You brought up Colin Trevorrow. He had one movie out of Sundance with like a budget of 52 cents.
Yeah.
And then he was given Jurassic World. So I think there are filmmakers with more under their belt and creators with more under their belt. And I'm not saying
friend of the show, Kings of Summer, the director of Kings of Summer, Jordan Roberts. Also, Kings of Summer and then Kong, But we need to, there have to be more opportunities. And the way to do that is, Mark?
Yeah, but it's like you look at Colin Trevorrow, you look at Jordan, but then you look at people like Karen Kusama, who've been working steadily for like 20 years and had their Sundance break and made movies both great and small, who are not getting these shots.
But then there is the Patty Jenkins, but she had to wait so long.
That's the thing.
Between Monster and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, like I know Universal has an initiative to try and shorten the gap between first and second films for especially women, female directors, because it takes forever. Like and momentum. This business is so much about momentum. Like I made a great movie, people loved it. What's your next thing? If it takes a decade, then how do you roll into the next thing, if that's going to take you 30 years to do? Like, it's impossible. It's impossible,
Yeah, I just want to be really clear, too, that I don't want to be throwing Kathleen Kennedy under the bus because I actually think, for a million different reasons. However, I'm curious. Look, she grew up in a certain way, right, in this business. She grew up surrounded by certain creators, and I have to think she has just got to be made of pure steel to get where she is under those circumstances. And a little bit, is it a matter of, like you said, I want to credit her for what she's done behind the scenes, and I think she's done a lot of good work, breaking free of her own life conceptions. Is that possible? We all have them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, and forgive me if I'm going to bring sports into this for a second, but the NFL has what's called the Rooney Rule. When they're looking to hire head coaches for football teams, the general managers of those teams and the owners are, by NFL law, if that's actually a law, required to interview a diverse candidate. Not hire, not automatically bring on, but literally just sit across from a dude who doesn't look like them and talk and say, what would you do with this team? And sometimes that goes nowhere, and that's fine. Sometimes you get Mike Tomlin and you win Super Bowls, but you don't ever get that if you're not forced to sit down for somebody who doesn't look like Steven Spielberg, which, yes, Kathleen Kennedy is a woman of pure grit and steel and awesome, but her formative career as a producer, her first credit is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like she's married to Frank Marshall. Like that's the world she was in. And she made movies, great movies, with great men who all look like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And so like sit down, go find these amazing filmmakers out of Sundance. Go find these amazing filmmakers who were doing stuff that you've never seen before. Widen your gaze. And hey, you might still hire JJ to do episode 9, but you might not.
Here's a really quick follow-up question about that, which is that when she hired filmmakers that she wasn't as comfortable with a couple of different times that were newer filmmakers, for example, like Josh Trank and Colin Trevorrow, it didn't work out that well. And my understanding of what I had read is that basically she just does not suffer fools gladly. And she's like, I grew up in a time where you had to earn your stripes, and you want to come in here and tell me what to do. You're not going to. There's a part of me that wonders, is she just going for comfort? What feels safe?
That's why you bring Ron Howard on to fix
your
movie. It's like, I did that thing. I hired these two young hotshots, and man alive, Ronnie, can you fix this for me?
Yes.
I gotta have,
man alive.
I gotta have a movie in like 2 months, man. Come on. Grand Theft Auto this mother right into the barn.
But Ava's right there on the Disney lot. She's right there. She's making a sci-fi fantasy.
But we don't know what she wants to do. Maybe Ava has no interest whatsoever in making a
She
Star
might
Wars
not.
movie. We don't know. We know that Jordan Peele, for example, has no interest whatsoever in doing a comic book movie or a Star Wars movie. He doesn't want to do it.
Well, can't they do it if I want them to?
No, they can't.
Yeah, I mean, there was that early talk early on that Marvel wanted Ava to do Black Panther.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's just not for me. But Wrinkle in Time, that'll be for me.
Yeah.
And hey, some filmmakers just do not have that simpatico sense with the material, but I bet you a lot do.
Yeah.
I just think there needs to be more. And Kathleen Kennedy, by the way, I've seen her name more in comments and whatever since Last Jedi came out than I have ever seen her name mentioned before. It's like, how much credit does she get for all of the incredible movies that she's produced over the years? Very little. And how much blame has she taken for the bad reaction to The Last Jedi? From what I've seen, quite a bit. And I don't think that's fair. And I think that speaks to a lot of things in this world that need to be fixed. But I think part of the reason that you have to commit even further to doing these things is because that's just there are some unfortunate realities about the world, and they're changing. Probably not fast enough, probably not enough, but I think that they're changing. But I think the way to keep that going is to, you know, it is great that she's assembled this roster of people, and I don't think that should be discounted as progress. But at the same time, I think that there are moves, and I you know, a lot of people say, oh, so you just want to put somebody in who doesn't deserve it just for, you know, to be a figurehead? No, not at all. I think it's like you said, it's expanding the net. And it's finding that voice, finding that you might not have otherwise found if you weren't looking.
Totally. And what the movies could be in the hands of a filmmaker who does not come from the same place. Like, I would give anything to see what Mira Nair would do with a Star Wars movie. And she's been making movies for 25 years. Like,
really
she's not...
pretty.
I mean, it would be gorgeous. It would feel like Bombay.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be Bollywood and lasers and all these amazing things.
That'd be awesome.
You know, like, I always think about the Harry Potter movies. Like, the first two Chris Columbus made, and, you know, they're fine, whatever. And then Alfonso Cuarón shows up. And then suddenly it's art. Suddenly it has a pulse. Suddenly it has this vibrancy that it didn't have before, because that dude cracked that clue. He figured out how to just break it apart and put it back together again and give it life on the margins in a way that no other director had before that. And you just don't get that perspective by just hiring the first dude who feels like he can do the job.
I just rewatched that the other day.
Prisoner of Azkaban is a wonderful movie.
It's a wonderful movie, and he captured the essence and the spirit of magic using the tools of cinema, because that's what he does, because he's a really good director, and Christopher Columbus was a fine producer. No, he's good. He's a good producer.
I think everybody who we're talking about, like, I keep thinking, because you brought up Thor, I keep thinking about, like, what Taika Waititi would have done if he had been given the solo movie. There are so many people who really could step up to the plate, and it is a question of access. It's a question of already having the track record. It's a question of accessibility. But also, one of the things we're not talking about is they're making so many of these. There is no reason. Yes, I know they need to make money. These are 1,000% bulletproof. They are always going to make money. You have to take a risk. What, Dan? What, smirky Dan? You don't think they're always going to make money? You don't think that there's an automatic audience for Star Wars?
Nothing is bulletproof forever.
If you make too many, and if you make too many of the same.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with The Last Jedi is I don't want episodic storytelling. I get it, they are episodes, but you still have to create a beginning, a middle, and an end in every film. And there's too much of an expectation that everybody knows what they're getting when they walk in, and everybody knows what to expect when they walk out. And I don't want that. I want originality. So that smirk is actually fodder for what we're saying, which is give us something original, give us something creative, because if we see the next 7 movies and they all fall in line with fitting into this weird cookie cutter mold that started back in the 70s, we're gonna get intensely bored. And I want to be enlivened by these. And we really have an opportunity here, not we, but Kathleen Kennedy and the rest of Lucasfilm, to break out a filmmaker in a huge way that is deserved. But they also have to be given the leash. And that's the thing. Like, with a story group, with the directing by committee, with so much oversight, you have to give people a little bit of room to be original and possibly to fail.
But you see that in I think a little bit in Ragnarok, and certainly in Black Panther. You see that this fits in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it also stands on its own, which is a movie that's not out yet, so perhaps I will not discuss it.
Right, but I mean, there is a thing that Marvel has been able to do, which is allow for a tonal variance.
Yes.
You know, in that these movies are going to be space movies. This is a heist movie. This is a political thriller. This is Jungle Awesome. You know, and because you have those different speeds, it never quite feels boring. The Avengers movies, ironically, are the ones that feel boring because they all feel the same way. Star Wars, every Star Wars movie has the same exact tone. And I was so excited when Miller and Lord came on. I was like, what? Okay, it's going to have, I mean, it should. It's solo. It's heist and scams. It should have some bounce. And that first trailer just looks like a Star Wars movie. Like it's got the same exact palette that like Rogue One has, that same exact like retro Stentorian feel. I'm like, guys, let's have some fun. Why can we not have some fun here?
I was just thinking of the Battlestar Galactica Centaurians. That's where my mind went. Yeah, it does feel a little boxy. Dan, I think that, and again, I think the point that we all want to make clear too is that we're talking about what is good for the story, for storytelling, creating opportunities that are going to make stories that we want to see that isn't just a cookie cutter. How many Star Wars are we getting?
Well, we got episode 9.
Yeah.
We got Solo coming out.
Okay.
We got supposedly 3 from Rian Johnson, although I don't believe it. Star Wars movie
I
is actually
kinda
coming
don't
out until
believe that
I'm sitting in a theater watching it anymore.
Right.
And then this series, which we don't know how many, but a series of films from Benioff and Weiss. And then who knows if this is going to replace the standalone or is it a spinoff of the standalone? But, you know, we've got at least one a year lined up for the next 2, 3, 4 years, which, you know, that's a whole separate discussion. And that seems to be where at least Disney is taking all of its franchises is 1 to 2. I mean, there were 3 Marvel movies last year, releases a year. Say what you will about how long that can keep up. That again, that's a whole other thing. But and again, I understand the difference in Kathleen Kennedy's role now versus what she did in the past. I understand that she's in kind of the Kevin Feige role of overseeing everything, and yes, you do take some of the heat. However, I think that the people that liked The Force Awakens gave JJ the credit. They didn't give Kathleen Kennedy the credit.
Isn't that interesting how that works out?
It is. So it's. I just really feel like, again, this is something she obviously feels very passionate about, and she has made this a linchpin of her strategy as the head of the Star Wars universe, and I just think that it's important to not make some changes and then kind of say like, all right, we're good. There are some roles that need to be filled, and I think that visibility counts as much as doing things behind the scenes. Visibility matters
in a way more.
You have to find, in a way, it does more because there's not people. Not everyone reads Hollywood Reporter and Variety. They don't know that there are a nice balance of women and people of color behind the scenes,
or even on camera, they don't know who
team.
Lupita Nyong'o played.
Yeah, or, and even people say, well, they've diversified the cast of the Star Wars movie, which is great, and I think that it has been done in a way that, despite what many of the dregs will say, I don't think that that's done in a cynical way. I think that they've written. I love Jyn Erso as a character. I didn't think she was there just because she was a woman. I love Rey as a character. I don't think she's really just because she's a woman. I think they've really done a good job of expanding their character base, but you have to, I think, always keep striving to break new barriers and break new boundaries because it's important.
Okay, question for the panel. Oh, go.
Sorry, I'm just getting the wrap up from our producer. Okay. I want to give you your opportunity.
Very quickly, just because this is my secret hope. What do you think the chances are that we would get a Lando Calrissian spinoff? And who would direct
Hell
it?
Yes.
You think?
Hell yes.
I want that bad.
F. Gary Gray doing it. Lando spinoff would make everything happen. Or let Donald do it himself.
Childish Landino. I know. It's not my pun.
No, I like that.
It's not my pun.
Donald writes.
And directs.
Yes. And does the soundtrack for a Lando Calrissian standalone movie?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes. I am so here for that Childish Landino, which can be credited to both Joe Starr and separately Paul Verhoeven. So you're in good camp.
Paul Verhoeven?
Yes.
Wow.
When he tweeted that, I was like, Paul Verhoeven tweeted.
But Joe totally separately said it.
I can pun also. Here's my pun.
Which is amazing. We do have to move on a little bit, but the last little asterisk, I think, is that, visibility matters in the sense of, like, it does matter if you think you're able to do something in life. That's been my experience, is when I don't think that I can do something, I can't, typically. And when I am led to believe that I can, I do. And that's just my own little experience, but I think it's true of a lot of folks.
And nobody will work harder than a person of color or woman given that shot.
Oh, yeah.
Be like, I will work myself to the bone if I get this shot.
Well, because the unfortunate truth is, at least in the whole Hollywood system, is if you blow it, you're not going to get another.
You get the one chance.
Even if you succeed, you might not get the second
That's true.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Patty's in a position right now, I think, to negotiate, but it's going to take one failure to be like, see, Anyway, and the final asterisk just on David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, I just want to say that I respect every opinion out there, but I think, Dan, you made the pull quote of life: silently love and loudly hate is how the humans are doing at the moment. I certainly respect any problems people have with the depiction of rape on that series and other things, but to say that they did nothing is not how an adaptation works. No. In my mind, there are good adaptations and bad adaptations of great works. And not for nothing, but Star Wars began with a brother in love with his long-lost sister. Yeah! Oh! Who's more tuned? Who gets that dynamic better than the Game of Thrones guys? Yeah. I'm just saying. I mean, I get if you don't like, I get if you're like not into the show anymore, but
what? Come on.
I do. I respect.
Maybe season 4, but not now. Come on.
It's an opinion. I'm just saying, like, they have created a gorgeous, cinematic, rich world. It's cool. Yeah. Cram it. 50 Shades of Grey, 50 Shades Freed is coming out this week. We are going to see the film tonight so that you probably don't have to. We'll have our review tomorrow. We do have a clip from Cram It, which is your catch-up on all the 50 Shades that we suggest that you watch for pure entertainment value. Do we have that to play?
As opposed to watching the movies. Which
yes. It's 7 minutes versus 4 hours.
It's a lot of whips.
Christian finally starts to come clean about what his deal is.
I don't do romance. My tastes are very singular.
But could he be more specific?
I don't make love. I hard.
Potato, look, I thought these movies were about freaky bondage stuff. Are we gonna do this or not?
Until, like...
I hope all of that is coming through. So that's Cram It, available on Screen Junkies Main right now. We have our Black Panther review also on Screen Junkies Main, featuring Miss Danielle Radford and myself. Mr. Dan Murrell will be doing the spoiler review, which
Mark,
will be
have you seen it yet?
I did, yes.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I see your Twitter feed, and it's like 9 days till, and I'm like, but you've seen it, right?
I went to the premiere.
Oh, right, with Kara Warner.
Yeah.
Did you love it?
I liked it quite a bit. Okay. I did not love.
Oh, interesting. Ooh, discussion afterwards. Movie Fights is tomorrow with Mark and Draco versus Rachel Cushing. That'll be a fun one to watch. I need to know your opinion on this. Maybe we'll just bring you back to talk about it once it's open and we can actually talk about the things. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Where can the people find you? I'm on the Twitters at Marc Bernardin and the Instagrams at Marc Bernardin, and I co-host Fat Man on Batman, which usually tapes every Tuesday at the Scum and Villainy Cantina in Hollywood. So come on down and drink nerdy drinks and watch us crack wise for no good reason. Sasha, you are? You can find me at Sasha Perl-Raver on Twitter and Instagram, and usually, just liking everything that Mark tweets because it's so good. You guys have been wonderful, intelligent, delightful. Dan Murrell, you're here. I'm here. Every day. Me too. We're just like here. Find us here. Come back here. Thank you guys for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow.